Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Rooster and the Villain. I'm always a little hesitant to play this Neil Melpe video before our interviewers come on because it's very random, but it is what it
No,
is at this point.
we love
Happy
a
to
good
have
intro.
Nicholas. What's that?
We love a good intro. Can't
Yeah,
complain.
there you go. So let's continue with the intros then. Nicholas, Nick Seiler, would you mind telling us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. My name is Nick Seiler. I am one of the co-founders of Baltimore City FC. I originally am from Germany, but I've lived stateside for a decade at this point, and I support a very really bad German team. And we can dive into that later.
Sounds good. And Joe, would you mind giving us a little bit of information about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Joe. I'm originally from the UK. I'm the other co-founder and co-owner of BCFC. Grew up playing in the academy programs across the northeast of the UK. Got released from a really good opportunity at 18 and got an opportunity to come over here on a scholarship for university. So played here at university. Got an opportunity to go out west and play. Ended up pulling a really short straw and ended up spending a year in Hawaii coaching soccer. And from there, kind of moved a little bit of my journey into business, sales, and marketing, and kind of brought me full circle to Baltimore, where we've been kicking this off for the last couple of years.
Yeah, it sounds great. I mean, I think it's probably let's just jump right into the club a little bit. How did it get started, and how did you two meet? And just tell me like the very beginnings of the club's history, Baltimore City FC.
Sure thing. Like most clubs, I think in the DMV Maryland area, the onus of this, or rather the genesis of this club, was just a very good recreation team. A rec team that played in the Howard County divisions, going up and up and up, winning, doing lots of winning and bringing home trophies. And a split occurred that basically said, well, where do we go from here? We keep winning. Around this time is when Joe and I, who were on this team, really started expressing our frustrations coming out of the pandemic, stating, there's no place really in the city of Baltimore for, a club fan growth to actually grow. Like, we both lived in the city. We wanted to be able to walk out of our house, go to a pub, grab a bus, go to somewhere else, grab another drink, go to a game, support the local club. Something that we were totally used to back home. When I was studying in Seattle, it's not even a Eurocentric thing. In Seattle, it's the same thing. Like, I would go out of my house, grab a bus, meet up with some friends, and within 50 minutes, I would be at the entrance to watch some great sport. And that's something that didn't exist here, still doesn't exist here to a high level. And it's more or less where the idea began, which is, let's see what we can do. If we just threw some ideas out and said, we know these people, we have connections to these folks over here, we believe that we can pull, some players from this area. And that was more or less the beginnings of sort of a sketch. But Joe and I paused and said, this has been done many times before. And there's a reason why those clubs don't exist anymore, or at least don't play in Baltimore anymore. And we took some time out late 2022 to really just talk to anybody who would pay any attention to us, which turned out to be damn near everyone. People love talking about soccer in Baltimore and soccer in Maryland. And we spoke to owners, captains, sponsors, players, managers, fans, right down to merch salesmen at one point. And they gave us some real good insight in terms of what worked for Club A and what didn't work for Club B, and what we should take advantage of now as opposed to what wasn't available previously. And those kind of things, Joe and I noticed a couple of patterns, couple of things that really stood out, and we created more of a blueprint that, we thought, let's do this. Let's launch into the Maryland majors in early 2023. And with our eyes set on not just sort of taking this at a week by week situation, but really long term, let's push this as far as we can. And we run on every week you got to move this forward, and we believe that in order for Baltimore to get its club, it's going to be a grassroots initiative. It's not going to be someone passing through with a big bank account. It's going to be a grassroots campaign that makes noise. The city is skipped on investment opportunities all the time, not just in sport. So when you live here, you know what that kind of attitude is. I mean, it's one of the most neighborly cities I've ever been to, and we recognize that at our games. I mean, Joe will tell you his experience because his experience has been illuminating. I'll let him take the rest of how the first season was.
Sounds good. Yeah, so his first season was Maryland Major League or Maryland Super Soccer League, and then last year
we started off in the Maryland Major Soccer League.
Okay, MMSL. Okay, and then from there, it looked like you also were in EPSL as of last season, right?
As of last year, yeah.
As of last year, okay. Yeah, so Joe, tell me how you got involved in the project, and I mean, I heard a little bit from Nick there too, but I would love to hear your perspective.
Yeah, I mean, as Nick said, we met playing, and I think the frustration, was felt across the board in terms of the quality of players. They're here in Baltimore like they are in most metropolitan cities. There just really wasn't a solid avenue, for those players who wanted to remain competitive and remain developing their game and be trained in the right ways. There really just wasn't that outlet or that opportunity. Our frustrations of having to, drive 45 minutes an hour to find a team that was playing at a good level, or even to find a team that wanted to wanted to train like midweek. It was kind of crazy for me, in my travels across the country, like finding teams to play for, and they don't, teams don't train. I'm like, what do you guys mean? How do you expect to win on a weekend if you don't train? This is bonkers. So, and it was the same problem here. We would have to go, a decent drive to kind of fix, tick that box. And we knew that the frustrations were there for us, so they were there for other people. And, it was just kind of, I think, our mission in terms of how much we love the sport and wanted to see it continue and grow, to kind of provide that opportunity for players to, come to the city and progress their game.
Sure, yeah. I mean, how aware were you when you started the club of the fourth tier of American soccer, UPSL, NPSL in general? Like, was that a big learning curve in that time frame? And when did you start to look into all that?
Yeah, it was definitely a learning curve. Kind of figuring out, who, which league is worth our time, I think is a question that we both asked ourselves and continue to ask ourselves, because, we look at football or soccer, all the way across the world, and, they've got a promotion and relegation system for a reason. And, as the MLS is set up, it's, head scratching, right? So it was kind of a learning curve. Was really interesting to dive into these leagues which are developing and their leadership that's in these leagues, and their philosophy on football, and certainly their philosophy on, how do we position our organization so that it helps to develop young players and provides opportunities for young players. Not just in regards to promotion and relegation, right? Like, I think the community aspect, Nick and I will both, talk about, chew your ear off about this, but I think that's one thing that we wanted to really bring to the club and hammer home is we understand how big community impact is, on a football team and vice versa. And, we want to provide that for the opportunity of people, here in Baltimore.
Yeah, I think that's a good transition a bit into, where you all were, where you grew up. Because Nick, you said before we jumped on the call and earlier, you grew up in Germany. Soccer culture is massive there. I mean, same thing, Joe, in Northeast UK. So, I mean, talk about the difference that you saw growing up. Hang on. And then
Hello.
Hi.
Yes. Okay.
We have a co-host.
Yeah. Good night. I'll come up later. I'm talking. All right. So my bad. All right. So yeah, I was asking you about your upbringing. Nick in Germany and Joe in the UK, and can you tell me what the youth experience was like there, and then contrast it to what you see here in the United States?
So I grew up a short walk away from the stadium that the team that I still support plays in. I support Hertha Berlin, and we play in a massive 75,000 seater stadium, and you could see the corner of it from the yard, and you would hear when they would play. But those are sort of the non-intangibles. What was good about the fan, and the fan experience that really hit me in my heart, which is how that transcends more than just the 90 minutes that the ball is rolling. And there is a unity behind it that I think is really, it's integral to sport. It's integral to sport in general. But I think for the purposes of this podcast, we're talking about a sport, and it's how it was created. It's how clubs begin, and it's how I think the best run clubs continue to develop. Well, even ones that are behind the curve, they quickly realize, well, no one's coming to our game, so we really need to start adding a little bit of that spice, if you will, to how we run things. And that was me in a city. My family came from villages on the other side of the country, and that was you had your village town. And that's a completely different experience, but boiled down, it really isn't. And whether it's in the city, whether it's in the village teams or not, the youth pipeline all leads to that. Everybody knows the son of the baker in rural Germany, whose son plays the 9 for the team. Like it's a conversation that you will hear in the morning as you pick up your goods, and it's a conversation you'll hear at the bar the night before. And then extrapolate that to the city experience. It's the same thing, albeit with millions of other people. And maybe I don't like to use the word tribalism, but think I will for the purpose of this. It's that case of unity behind it. And at least for the club that I support, it's very much the whole city bar 2 neighborhoods supports this team. And though they're really bad right now, the whole city is still kind of like, we're not going to switch to the O team. This has always been who we have been aligned with, and that's who we are going to be aligned with no matter what. And quite frankly, I benefit from the fact from, that soccer itch of mine being scratched when I moved to Seattle. It's the exact same thing. That team's been around since the 70s, and you can tell. And yeah, it really experienced a massive boost when it joined the MLS. That's no denying, but the culture is still very organic. It's still very natural. And when it evolves and changes, it still does so with an essence of keeping to its true purpose, which is unifying the city behind one club. It's an alien would look at this as incredibly silly, but who cares? It's still fun. At the end, it's just fun.
Seattle's one of those rare cases in the United States where there is a really good and deep soccer culture. So yeah, Joe, would you mind chatting too about your background, and then we'll jump into what you guys are doing to go into the community and start the growth that way.
So I grew up between Manchester and Leeds. My town is called Huddersfield. If you're a follower of the Premier League, you'll have seen them in and out of it over the last kind of decade or so, fairly infrequently, but they've made a few appearances. Huh. I was overlooked, I should say, a lot in football terms as a kid, because I boxed at quite a high level. So when I kind of started getting into football, I was just much fitter and stronger than everybody else, and that was kind of my leverage into finding some success. And it was really kind of that aspect which kind of got a shoe into an opportunity at a couple of academies, and I ended up being able to take them. And I think the biggest kind of difference I saw when I came here for college was, first of all, the standard was better than I thought it was going to be. and I went to kind of a non-existent D2 program that was in a complete rebuild when I came here, which we rebuilt it to something which was fantastic. But I thought I didn't think the standard was going to be quite as good as it was. I think that there was definitely a lot of things kind of overlooked or not given enough attention in terms of like what younger players here were coached, through the younger years and as they develop. So my experience in college was kind of, I was there to play and to lead on the field, but my coach was very clear. It's like, hey, I'm looking for people who can do this and can do that with a football, but I need your kind of experience. I need you to help develop these players around you and your teammates. This is kind of how we build a successful team here. I'm not just relying on you to come and, stop goals going in the back of the net. So I think, one thing that's developed over the last 10, 12-ish years or so since, I've kind of been out of college is the opportunities for players now are just leaps and bounds ahead of where they were. I remember sitting in my college library in the middle of nowhere, Pennsylvania, in early spring, like coming out of the winter, emailing coaches about trying to figure out, if there was an opportunity to play for them, in the spring or in the summer. And we were in Pennsylvania, but we were emailing coaches in Sacramento because we knew that they had a team that was half decent, and that was kind of one of few options. So now for the opportunity for players that they have at their fingertips, and obviously what we're trying to provide, it's night and day, which is fantastic to see. The traction that the country's getting.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to unpack there. It's there's a lot of international players, it seems, that head into the even like junior college Division II level. But I'm sure since you were in college, like you see MPSL, UPSL, USL League 2 are kind of these like college off-season leagues now. So there is a lot more opportunity. And I don't think, it's a massive country too, which the talent is there somewhere. It's just in all these silos. Like a round trip from Spokane to Naples in USL League 1 is a 6,400-mile round trip. Like that's insane. I think Norwich to London's like 255 miles round trip. But I digress a little bit.
I mean, it's important to always, remind ourselves, I think, and I do mean this in conversations that I have with some great visionary people. It's good to pause and remember we're part of a federation, one of 3 federations that take 4, if you want to count Canada as its own separate thing, that operate on its own continent. It's us, Canada, Russia, and Australia. I mean, it's bizarre to think that, there's 4 different time zones, and there are going to be, pressure points here and points of just confusion and complication in terms of trying to run a federation that's just so gigantic. I mean, you can fit 50 Germanys in this country, actually many more. It's tough. But one thing that in my opinion, I don't know if Joe has a little bit more experience than I do when it comes to the sport, playing the sport in this country, which is in the past 2 years alone, but really in the past 3, I think amateur soccer is having a moment right now in the country. And it's not just restricted to the college leagues, though those are extrapolated and going through some real great times. But what the UPSL has done, starting off as just an LA area suburban soccer league, has taken over the entire country. What the APSL has done, extrapolating from historic teams out of New York City to go all the way down the East Coast, is all very cool and very cool to be part of. If there was ever a moment, I mean, I wondered, I guess it's not my podcast, but I'd be curious to ask Joe, like, there just seems right now, like, if you can't find, I mean, there are so many options for good quality clubs. What is important is to sort of get to know them and recognize the league maybe doesn't matter. The club name might not matter. What does matter is how it's run, how it's coached, and things like that. And if there was ever a better time to get involved in amateur soccer, either as a player or a supporter, it's now.
Yeah, it's definitely the right time. I think the biggest kind of learning curve I had in my career was when I started playing open age football. I was 14, 15 at the time. like, playing for a pub team, playing for my local pub. And I remember my first season just getting waxed by, 25, between 24 and 40-year-olds, and they just killed me on experience. But that learning curve was just, it was like the hockey stick analogy. Like, I learned so much in that first season just by being in positions to fail constantly, and kind of playing against those players who just made me look stupid. I think that was a big thing that I when I came here, I recognized players didn't have that, because for the most part, players just played in their age group. It was almost very, very uncommon for players to play out of their age group, of the kind of players that I were playing with when I came over. And that's definitely very different now. And, especially for us, we have had some teenagers that are magnificent young footballers, like magnificent. And they're 17, 18 years old, and they're playing against, some of our players are, in their late 20s or even early 30s, and tons of experience, tons of really good, accolades and college and recognition and, playing standards. And they're competing and beating them in moments in practice. And to be able to, kind of see that unfold or see that problem that I came and recognized quite early on, and something I'm very thankful for my career and the development of my career, for us to kind of, sort that problem out or provide an option, here in Baltimore. It's really, I think that's a kind of a strong basis of what we operate off of. It's very fulfilling.
Yeah, and some of the teams walked onto a practice. Couple of those teams just walked into a practice. They said, "Oh, I live in the neighborhood here. I don't, I can't drive out to the county. I can't drive out to, wherever." And for one reason or another, weren't picked up by some of the other academy clubs. And the talent is absolutely there in this city. It's heartbreaking to think of just how many players aren't being seen, but that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to be, hey, we're here. This is the club for you.
Yeah, I think with the ethnic diversity of the city and some of those ethnicities that are more naturally inclined to soccer, there's so many kids out there that need the opportunity. And, like you alluded to with amateur soccer growing, and also too with the age groups, like club soccer, pay to play is always, you are playing against that same age group. But if these kids can get into an adult club, get blooded early, play against the guys that don't mind throwing an elbow at a 16-year-old, it does teach a lot of good lessons. But I want to ask you a little bit. So this season, coming into the season, you're part of two leagues. Would you mind telling me a bit more about APSL? I knew it as the Eastern Premier Soccer League last year.
Yep.
I became aware of it because Bobcats 2 played in that league. Yep. I'm still a little new. Like I started watching Premier League in 2016, and then from there I've cascaded down the divisions, and now I'm just kind of obsessed with all levels of American soccer. But I'm still kind of new to this area, so I was hoping you could, give me an education on EPSL, APSL, and then also the Super League and what you guys got going on for this season.
Sure. We have had our eyes set on the then EPSL since early 2023. We knew that is where we wanted to very quickly end up because of the competition, because of how well it's run and its accessibility. We knew that for the talent, that's where we wanted to play, and for the exposure for the brand, we knew that we wanted to go regional as opposed to hyper focused into just one area. And we benefited from having a player pool that also understood this and took that challenge. The EPSL it's new. It's been around since 2020, but some of those clubs, particularly the ones in New York and Philadelphia, have been around since the 1910s. And you are talking about teams that still hold to their ethnic backgrounds, their ethnic roots. There's 3 Greek teams, 2 Irish teams, there's a Russian team, there's a Ukrainian. It's where the name soccer came from. Social clubs, it is still the league that cherishes the sport and this country's experience with the sport to this day for over 100 years. And we're very proud to be part of that. We're one of the new guys. We might be one of the newest clubs in this entire federation, but we, as this podcast hopefully shows, that me and Joe are soccer losers and we're fully into this kind of stuff. And that's sort of the lore, if you will, but the competition, and it's run really well. It's run really, really well. It was until now in association with NISA. Being a Bobcat supporter, that's basically on its way out, if not already. But it is going to be picked up by another to-be-announced federation. Not my place to say. Just watch this space.
It's league for clubs, but yeah. Yeah.
But since we're going to be going into the third season with the APSL now, since I do believe that they're starting to generate some divisions into sort of inland Pennsylvania, a little bit into Tennessee, a little bit. It's our third season with them. We've seen it grown. We haven't got a single regret. There's been funny stories. There will always be funny stories in amateur football at any level, at any country, but there's some big names there. I mean, you have Nova, the powerhouse out of Northern Virginia. You still have the Bobcats. They're doing
the U23 team. Yep.
Yeah. They've been doing a lot of recruiting going into the season. Christos plays their open men's team there right now. And Virginia Marauders, that would be the other sort of top tier team that's sort of in the top half that we're trying to compete for qualification for playoffs for this year. And the winner of our division, the Mid-Atlantic, will play the winners of the other divisions in a to-be-announced EPSL playoff situation. Last year was in Lancaster, Pennsylvania.
Oh, cool. Yeah, and so through that league too, is that part of USSA, and an Open Cup spot is possible? And
it's all possible. It is USSA
amateurs
accredited is the word, I believe. And the winner indeed does play, gets put into the pool for U.S. Open qualification with a berth also in the United States Amateur Soccer Association Cup.
Gotcha. Okay. So that's like the first team essentially for Baltimore City FC, and then is that right, or is that do you kind of mix it up between? So the other league, want to tell me about that a bit, the Super League?
Sure, we do mix it up. I think there was a time when we used to split it between first team and second team, but that has changed. Joe is more the person to answer that question, but I do believe there's more of an overlap. We did want to have very, very distinct quality between. Well, not a distinct quality between from second selection or two squads that you have on the weekend. It could be one squad playing in each other league. It's just going to be a matter of balancing tactics, balancing strategies, and also we are a pool of adults, not paid athletes. So it's going to be a case of also schedule and availability for each player. The Super League has been around also since 2020 or 2021. Broke away from the Maryland Majors, which we used to be part of, and it has picked up a couple of other teams. It's based out of the Baltimore County as opposed to Baltimore City, and it also has a Virginia division as well. It's run by some really talented folks. It's got some really good quality in it. We wanted to move there because we wanted a fresh challenge. We won the Maryland Majors 2 or 3 times, and we talked to the player pool and said, "You want to go for again, or do you want to try something new?" And a lot of the leaders on the team said, "Let's do something new. Let's keep our eye focused on EPSL, but if we're not going for the EPSL, let's try something new."
So, Joe, I guess that goes into a little bit how you build the player pool. And I mentioned some of those other leagues as college off seasons, and I think that there was this gap until recently where younger adults that weren't college students still wanted to play at a very high level. It seems like that's something that you guys fit into, but can you talk about how you develop the rosters and that sort of thing?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It was kind of bonkers to me, like coming over here and learning more of the culture and kind of the penny dropping on that most athletes, as soon as they graduate college, no matter really what the sport is, most of the people here hang their boots up.
Yeah.
And, it's 22, 23. It's almost borderline blasphemy. right?
Yeah, I
you're
mean, I'm
not
37. I still like to run out there.
yeah, like you're not even anywhere close. Hopefully, anywhere close to like your peak, right? You're not even you're still on your way up at 22, 23 years old. So it's again, more really positive changes and opportunities across the country, which I think obviously is why we're seeing more players being picked up from here, and more American players playing in the Premier League, playing in the La Liga, playing in the top divisions, playing for good teams. I think it's all kind of a part of the wave, or the turning of the tide, if you will. For finding players, we've definitely been fortunate. I think because we were ingrained in the Baltimore soccer network, Nick and I, for years before we really kind of put some steam behind this. We were definitely fortunate that we were winning, which is one thing that's that's an easy way to put it, right? We were winning. People wanted to play for us, but like I think we both focused in our personal lives on building good relationships with people, whether it's soccer or not. I think that's definitely played to our strengths. I think I remember when we held our first couple of trials, or like the pre-meetings for our trials, the first time around, and we had 3 trials set up, and I think our goal was like 20 players. If we could get 20 players from these first 3 trials, we'd be absolutely buzzing. And we had like 28 players at the first trial, and we were like, oh wow, this okay, cool. And then the second trial there was more players, and then the third trial there was more players, and we were like, oh, we might be onto something here. And like our first season was incredible because we lost like our first 3 or 4 games, and it was one of those kind of spells of a month of be patient, guys, be patient. We have talent and quality on this field. There's just a couple of tweaks that we need to make. There's just a couple of more hours we need you guys playing together before this really starts to tick and gel. And yeah, we lost. I think we lost our. I think did we tie, Nick, our first one, then lost 3, and then went on like a 24 game across 3 season winning streak.
You're exaggerating. We lost the first 3 and then went on a 13 game winning streak.
That was it. That was close.
Which Pat surpassed also winning the entire thing on the way.
Yeah. Like we went like over the course of like 7 months, and we didn't lose a game. So, a part of finding players was, a part of it was we were winning. A part of it was we were developing players. I think a part of it, which we talked about a little bit, was, we tried to focus early on what we felt our experience and strengths were, which was community and how we see football, intertwine and work within the community, and making sure that the players know that. I think our first season, we went back to city limits after our games, pretty much after every game. And I think that in itself was, a breath of fresh air, and certainly a culture, a changing culture for our players. Because, usually, most of them will have been used to just whistle blows for 90 minutes, quick chat, change your boots, hop in the car, off you go. And we were quite adamant early on, like, no, like this is not values that we have as a club. This isn't who we are as people. Like, yeah, we want to compete and we want to win, but first and foremost, we want to build a community, and you do that through the social aspect of it after.
I mean, that's what I love about soccer in the country, is that there is this niche of people. Maybe it's not as big as NFL or baseball or the other sports, but everyone that truly loves it wants to talk about it and wants to group together. So I think community is massive. But Nick, you were about to say something?
Yeah, it was just City Limits was a bar.
Gotcha.
It's located right on the corner of Latrobe Park, and it's also next to the parking lot where a lot of the players and the fans would park. And on the way there, you would see people wearing jerseys. At the time, we overproduced a lot of our uniforms, and well, we always knew that we wanted to sell some merchandise, but we actually sold out very early on, and it was a lot. And we would be out on game day, and it was, in amongst, obviously on a weekend you'd see Premier League jerseys, but come 5 o'clock in the evening you'd actually spot one or two BCFC jerseys, which was bewildering during the first year of existence, but it was cool and special. It was it was validating at this point, and it did play into the idea of, hey, that player that you were cheering for, he's going to be, buying some wings at the bar afterwards. And we would really hammer in the community aspect. We would start to take part in, neighborhood events like block parties or festivals, and we would be there very visible and with some players and make sure that they knew that this is not some guys. Like, we're trying to build a bit of a culture and a bit of a community behind that culture, and succeeded, quite frankly. Very proud of that. Very proud of the player pool that we have. And that was something that I think it required a little bit of encouragement, but for the most part, a lot of the players understood that. Like, we benefited from having a really good player pool of guys who were just good club members, not just during the game, but also afterwards.
Yeah, so you guys play your home games in Patterson Park out in Baltimore. What is the game day atmosphere like at this point?
Well, it's going to be new for us. We used to play down in Middle Branch, which was a beautiful facility, but just had its limits in terms of what we could do in the branding. But we didn't want to play at Patterson Park during 2024 because the field wasn't good. But the field just got redone. It's in great quality. It's got a surprise or two waiting for it. You got to come to a game and see it. But one thing that we are already working with is our main sponsor is Guildford Hall Brewery, and they have a subsidiary bar about a 10-minute walk away from the field. So we're going to be doing some pre-match situations over there for the fans, and then walk to the game together. We have the flags and the banners that we've had since the first game of existence, and we're looking forward to just making a bunch of noise during quiet spring afternoons at Patterson Park.
Patterson Park is awesome. I've actually played futsal on there. I don't know if you've heard of Street FC at all. It's a futsal app.
We know the Street FC guys. We love them.
Oh, you know Abe?
I do. I used to play out there too, particularly when they were in the gym. Those are good guys.
Yeah. Abe's he's awesome. So a lot of good guys in Baltimore. I think that's an awesome spot to have a team. It's sorely needed. It sorely needs a pro team. But I feel like you're right. Like, the best way to start that is with a community club. So I think you're doing all the right things. But as far as branding is concerned too, I wanted to talk about, some of the color schemes and some of the thoughts behind the branding that you guys have come up with Baltimore FC.
It's a little on the nose, and I acknowledge that, but Baltimore City is not Baltimore County. A lot of our players and our operations are here in the city. Try to keep it that way. Our supporters and our sponsors do also have that mentality behind it as well, which is support your neighbors, support the people that you're going to cross paths with. It's Smaltimore at the end of the day. And the colors are the colors of the flag. So when I keep it that way, if you can work out the logo, it's actually the 7-foot knoll, which is the lighthouse on the Inner Harbor. A lot of people think it's Pagoda. It's actually the lighthouse on the Inner Harbor, who are supporters of the club too, as it turns out. The people who run that, the NGO, Historic Ships of Baltimore, they're actually big fans of us. Joe once told me that the playing style is also a little bit of that siege mentality, go get 'em atmosphere that you'll get here in the city. So we're very happy about that. That's something that I think grew organically, right?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's, we try to play in a way that represents us and, what how the city operates.
Yeah. So, I did have one question too about the Maryland Cups, because I'm not so familiar with the Roland Cup, but I saw you guys had a team there playing last week. So what is the Maryland? Is it like the Maryland State Cup for amateur squads? The Roland Cup?
There's 3 of them. There's the Stewart Cup, which is basically a regional qualifier for the United States Amateur Soccer Association National Cup. It's one of the ways.
Sure.
And then
Heard of
there's
that one.
the Roland Cup, and then there's the Morton Cup. The
Heard
Roland
that
Cup
one.
is best way to look at it is to see the Roland Cup as sort of the Champions League, and then the Morton Cup. Do I have the other way around? No, I don't. The Morton Cup would be sort of the UEFA Cup, sort of the
Gotcha.
second. And reason we did that is we finished an EPSL, bit of a walking wounded situation. We had a lot of players just finish that season saying, I need to get rested throughout winter. And we looked at the pool that had won the squad that had won the Maryland Majors. And we thought, that's basically a qualifier. They qualify the Maryland Majors. Let's send them out to the Morton Cup. And they did really well. We're really, really happy we made the final. Final was a bit of a doozy. But it's another final that we made. We're perennial finalists. And continue. We're very happy about how the past season went. And we're very excited using that energy to go up and even further to greater heights in this upcoming spring season.
Yeah. So what are the goals for this year? And then, what's kind of a 5-year plan? If you have that in mind, then I'll let you guys get out of here, and I'll make sure to come to a game this spring and summer.
Joe, you can take that one.
Sure. Yeah. So moving into the Super League, we start in the second division and need to earn that right of promotion up into the first division. So the goal there is quite clear. It's we're in this, lads, to build up into and get promotion into the first division, and then obviously from there, we want to win that. I think that will give us another really good foothold into elevation, and hopefully, that goes hand in hand with the goals for the EPSL. Always have to be to win it. I think a smaller goal within this next season is to beat Nova. We've competed and had the better of them and been on the wrong side of poor decisions, which is a part of the game. We've lost we've lost those games by a couple of inches and a post being in the right place. So we've competed with them, and we've definitely given them a run for their money in moments. But I think overall they've shown their class and their quality, and how well their organization's built and coached. They controlled the ball well, they controlled the game in critical moments and areas of the field, and I think achieving that level of football and chemistry within a group of young lads that's really the next goal, because winning the league and beating Nova is a byproduct of doing that really well.
And are you guys still building the roster at this point through some trials in the spring, or is it pretty much set at March 10th where we are?
So we had trials. We had a trial game this weekend. We've been holding trials for the last couple of weeks. We have last couple of games kicking off this week, as we build into start the season. So we've got a good idea of who we want to be where, but kind of like what Nick said earlier, we can't kind of lose our touch, if you will, right now, in understanding that we're still a really good amateur team, and we can't pay our players. We aren't paying our players, and that means that we all have jobs, and we all have other things that are just as important as as turning up on a Saturday or Sunday and getting 3 points. So we know who our EPSL squad is, and we know where those overlapping players are, and we've got a really good idea of that other group of players that we want to focus on and put energy and time into developing. We've got a pretty clear idea who they are and expectations we want from them over this season.
Gotcha. Yeah. So any other final thoughts before I let you get out of here? And where can people find you?
Well, you also touched on the 3 to 5 year plan on this one, which is anybody who pays attention to me is going to quickly wish they didn't, because I'm going to be telling them that this is the only way that the city gets a club is a grassroots approach. And what we've quickly learned in 3 years is that the powers that be here agree. It is going to require, real movers and shakers have more or less realized that. And it's going to have to be a unified movement behind one entity. And we believe we have made the strongest case that we're the city's club. We're the city's club. And come to a game, get loud. There's no reason why an amateur game should be quiet. And we've proven that point. And you come to I think our first championship had over 300 people at our game. And that's not an exaggeration. We counted. And we've seen similar numbers during playoff games, and all clubs will have dips during bad spells or during weird weather and things like that. But I can assure you that we're still going to be one of the only amateur clubs in the area that has quite a number of people coming to our games with the right, with the jerseys on, making sure that they're being loud for 90 minutes. And other players that we've spoken to for opposite teams have said, yeah, I have never played against a cheering crowd before going for against the other team ever before in my life, or at least since high school, for example. Yeah. And that's cool. Like I said, amateur soccer is having its moment in this country, particularly in this region, and particularly in Maryland. There's no better time to get involved with BCFC and try to push this, because in 3 years, I think this can be done. I think
you're getting me hyped up for the season all of a sudden. I feel like you guys have some cool partnerships already lined up. You mentioned Guilford Hall. But I see some others like Jimmy's Famous Meals and Beltway. And So can you quickly run me through some of the partnerships, and then we'll get out of here?
Sure. We got Guilford Hall. They along with Waterfront Dental are the two initial businesses that helped Joe and I really take this to the next level from just a regular, recreational team. We owe them so much. They're, alpha and omega in making this club actually happen. And then very quickly, Jimmy's got involved. Glacken Physiotherapy has been with us since the start. We're going to, we haven't publicly announced it, so breaking the news right here, we're going to be in a partnership with Pompeian, which is a olive oil distribution company throughout the United States, and actually I think a couple of international destinations as well. They are super excited, and most notably is they're actually one of the closest sponsors to Patterson Park. And we're trying to work on some real sort of collaboration location-wise between the two, us and them. And there'll be some other announcements coming out soon of some new incoming partners as well. But the most important partners are the ones that come out to our games. Attendance is free, but the value of their being there, players come up to me afterwards, and they come up to the fans afterwards and say, you tilted the tide, you made the ref make a decision one way or another, or you gave energy to a player who maybe is not in the greatest of forms and breaks through that, slump to be able to play back to their strengths. I cannot stress that enough, that the fan aspect of this sport at any level is invaluable. And I'm so happy that we have a place here in the city to finally bring that kind of extension and vibe to.
Yeah, the old cliche of the 12th man is definitely a thing. Like you see it in lower level, like cup, not lower level, but second versus first division cup competitions all the time, where a big club goes and plays a small venue, and the crowd goes crazy. And yeah, you can see that kind of atmosphere.
It'll also help in drowning out Joe swearing out the refs. So there's that too.
Yeah. I know a guy that lives up that way that supported the Bobcats first team that can swear at the refs for you too. His name's Alex. Best swearers I've ever seen. So I'll send him your way.
Please do.
Yes, please do. Yes, please do.
Anyone
I've heard the refereeing, if you come from outside into the country, is subpar. So I'm not sure if that's your experience, but
it's getting a lot better.
That's good to hear. It's good to hear. All right. Well, thanks so much for talking with me. I appreciate it.
Mike, it was a pleasure. Thank you so much. Have a great evening.
Yes,
thank you for having us. Appreciate it.
Yep. Good luck with the season.
See ya.
Yep.